Hello, everyone. We're going to let everyone in the room. Just some quick housekeeping. If you have any questions during the panel that you'd like us to answer at the end, you can use the link at the top of the screen to text your questions to. If you open that up, you can send your questions in. As Chris mentioned, my name is Damon McWhite. I'm the program manager for One Philadelphia. Really excited about today's panel. Very distinguished guests. Want to let everyone go around and introduce themselves. Also tell you about the organizations that they work with, and then we'll jump right into the conversation around building inclusive innovation hubs. So Sandra, you want to go first?
Do I want to?
Well, I guess you have to.
After, right? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Sandra Mosquera. My day job, I'm Vice President of Technical Product Management at JPMorgan Chase. But I also work with Latinas in Tech, so I'm co-founder for Latinas in Tech Philadelphia chapter, and I work with the Festival of Diaspora and Casa Innovation, which is an organization that creates the Festival of Belonging of the diasporic community, and every year we do it in a different country. So next year is going to be in, and you guys are welcome to ask me about it later.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Jeffrey Gyan. I am, for my 9 to 5, I'm a senior program manager for Amazon. I also am the founder of Prolific Pillars, which is a consulting company specializing in strategic advising, fundraising, and grant writing. And then for a reason why I'm here is I'm the director of operations and chief of staff for Techsgiving. So really a technical pivot program where people are able to develop skill sets, people are able to have a community that they can learn from to kind of develop professional skills and have a community to source from.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashli Sims. I'm the managing director of Build in Tulsa. I do come from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the historic home of Black Wall Street. I run an entrepreneur support organization that is dedicated to helping amplify and elevate founders who have been overlooked for far too long. We really try to double down on human capital, social capital, and financial capital to make sure that founders are successful.
Awesome. How's everyone doing? Joey Womack, founder, CEO, Goodie Nation, based in Atlanta, Georgia. We are ecosystem building organization focused on closing what we call the relationship gap for innovators in this space. And so we run a number of programs, including the Post Accelerator program, partners like Google for Startups, Lenovo, AWS, and many, many others.
Great. So first question I want to jump into, as you heard, we have a panel that represents a few different cities here. So we have Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Tulsa, and of course Atlanta. So the first question I would like to ask for Joey and Ashli in particular, we'll start there, would be what do you think is unique about your city and how are you capitalizing on that uniqueness?
I think Tulsa is one of the best kept secrets in the country. I think that makes us pretty unique. I think our history as Black Wall Street is part of what makes our story unique and also part of what makes what we're doing right now very special. If you're not aware, in the 20s, a community called Greenwood was one of the most prosperous Black communities in the country. We were home to the most Black millionaires of anywhere in the country. And then about 103 years ago, in 1921, a white-led mob descended on the area and burned it to the ground. 300 businesses were destroyed, lives were lost, wealth was destroyed, a generation of wealth was eradicated. And so part of what we're doing with Build in Tulsa is not just looking backwards, but looking forwards. What can we do? What are the supports that we can put in place that make it possible to rebuild that generational wealth? And we feel like the pathway to building that generational wealth is entrepreneurship and tech. And so that's what Build in Tulsa is about. We have a series of programs, a series of partners, including our friends at Lightship Capital, that are working with us to invest in the community, invest in folks who are from Tulsa, but those who are new to Tulsa as well, to build an ecosystem that really is focused on helping minority entrepreneurs thrive.
Great. Joey?
Yeah, so at Goodie Nation, we run a program called Atlanta Black Tech, and people will tell you about Atlanta owes a lot of corporations and, leads the country in terms of universities and colleges within the metro area, so tons of talent, lots of Black talent, all that is absolutely true. But I think one of the things that separates us from the rest of the country, in many cases, is our ability to intentionally work together to build the tech community. And when I say intentionally, like we ran a playbook going back a number of years to make sure we had leaders in place that are people of color across many different parts of the community to leverage our resources and our relationships to elevate founders, put them in position to succeed. For example, a person from our team at Goodie Nation got hired by the Atlanta airport, right, to essentially lead marketing, which, you know, I was happy for her. I was happy for her. I was happy for her, right? yeah.
Sounds like you coping right now.
No, it's cool. At the time, it was like, but you know. But here's, so she gets in, super long story short, they're running a program to connect people in the tech space to the airport, solve problems, right? So long story short, we ran a program, and I created the rules for this program because the city could not do it. I said any startup that participates in this program must have a person of color on the team, and the winner of this prize gets a pilot with Atlanta's airport. Busiest one in the world, right? So here's where the more intentionality comes, right? We took a founder from our program and said participate in it, right? Source some other startup founders from across the city of color. This person, Jasmine Crow from Goodie, won the competition. That's how she got her pilot with Atlanta Airport. She went on to raise a Series A and stuff like that, right? And so she got support from Techstars, Atlanta. No, Techstars anywhere, but people that made that decision were from Atlanta, that were put into that position. And so again, we're very intentional about how we do things.
Very dope, very dope. Jeff, I wanted to ask you, I know the nickname for DC is Chocolate City, right? Isn't that the nickname? Yes. So what is Techsgiving doing to build community in the city of DC? What are you focusing on? What are you seeing in DC?
Great question. So DC is very much a chocolate city, and I think it's unique in a sense where, one, similar like other major melting pot cities, Houston, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, you do see a lot of black faces, but I think it's concentrated in the DC area. Particularly when it comes to DC, I think DC is the best kept secret when it comes to government contracting. And so that's a new space where we see like a lot of startups kind of leaning towards, or opportunities per se. Particularly with Techsgiving, our bread and butter really comes from this workforce development program. So we actually had our kickoff in Philadelphia last night, actually. So we're pretty much sponsoring people who are looking to develop in the Scrum area, so administering professional Scrum certifications. And we've partnered for this particular with the Urban League and Axon. So we're partnering with various organizations all over in different major cities. When it comes to DC, we had 2 successful cybersecurity cohorts. And so what that looks like is we pretty much source different people who are looking to develop in the professional space. But in addition, we also have startup pitch competitions. So SVB has been our partner, so Silicon Valley Bank has been our partner with various events. And pretty much we have people who are looking to build their business, come in and have a presentation to potentially win funding. In addition to that, we kind of sponsor different events throughout the year where we focus on like building structure for organizations and just for professional development. So whether you're looking to be employed in a space or you're looking to kind of develop, we're just providing those resources. I think a lot of it just comes down to kind of understanding like what your goal is and aligning your vision and your mission.
Great. So Sandra, we know your approach is more international, right? So you mentioned the Festival of the Diasporas, but also can you talk a little bit about Latinas in Tech Philly, who won our Community Cultivator Award last night? Can you give that? Absolutely, well-deserved, great organization. But can you talk about some of the work that you guys are doing here in Philadelphia, but then also highlight some of the work that you're doing with the Festival of the Diasporas?
Yeah, so let me start with Philly. So Latinas in Tech is an organization that is about helping Latinas thrive in tech. The organization is international too, and each chapter has its own flavor. For the Latinas in Tech Philadelphia, our main goal is to create a safe space, not just for Latinas, but for minorities, right? So we focus on, if you think about the Latino stereotype, we're very family oriented. And we want to make sure that when we are talking to our members, we are being like a mom, like a dad, like a cousin, and keeping it real, right? to be able to thrive in corporate, because what we do is corporate tech, you have to learn things that nobody will tell you because we don't come from that, right? We don't have people that will tell us you have to navigate the politics, you have to dress differently. We often, especially in tech, get this, bring your authentic self to work and you are going to be accepted because you're a great developer. But it turns out that minorities are coming into tech at high numbers, but they're leaving tech at high numbers. And then they're not growing in tech because they don't become the VPs, they don't become the EDs, they don't. And a lot of it is because of lack of information and lack of knowledge. So with Latinos in tech, we are making sure that we are bringing the knowledge for the corporate world and telling people how to navigate this. Right now, we're focusing on the tech laid off. How do you get back into the workforce? How do you stay active? How do you upskill? What do you learn? How morale, how you keep up the morale, because that's the most important. If we're a family, we have to talk about when we cry, when we succeed, and when we fail. So that's what we do with the Latinas in Tech. With the Festival of the Diaspora, and we were having the conversation outside, it's about belonging for diasporic communities. So what we do is we bring philanthropic people, and we bring investors, entrepreneurs to different countries in Latin America. So the idea is that when we unite and we do things that we like culture, like talking about it, because sometimes when we are minorities, we talk about the fun things, but we also like having deep conversations about important topics. So the Festival of the Diaspora creates a space where you have fun, but you also talk about innovation, about entrepreneurship. You talk about where are we going to get funding next, because we know what's happening with the investment and how the laws are going in the US, but we don't have to just keep ourselves in the US. You can look at different countries and start building communities outside. For my personal goal as a Black Colombian, I want to make sure that the Black Americans understand that there is opportunities in Latin America with the Black communities. So what I tell people is, if you have a startup and you need 3 developers, you can get 6 in Colombia, right? The one thing that I say is, don't expect them to speak English, but
That's where Chat GPT comes in, where we can get it translate.
you need them to speak Java. You need them to speak, Python. Their code will run even if they don't know how to say hello. So my goal is to tell people, you need to change your mindset when it comes to this English first, when it comes to startups, right, with tech. English first mentality, because you're missing out on great labor in Latin America that is Black labor, and we are creating a connection that is more than just money. So that's the type of work that we do.
Very cool, very cool. So one of the things I want to talk about, especially because we are here at the One Philadelphia Innovation Weekend Summit, and this track in particular is talking about entrepreneurship, but under the lens of building inclusive innovation hubs, is, and anyone can jump on this question, the first one. What are the core elements of a pathway for an entrepreneur? What should a city have? What should a program like One Philadelphia, what do you guys have in Atlanta and DC or in Tulsa that you think are the core elements of a journey for an entrepreneur who's looking to break into tech startups?
I feel like the exact thing is
I think that there's a number of elements. We rely on 3 pillars: human capital, social capital, and financial capital. So the human capital, you have to have elements that help founders build skills and build knowledge. Like your point, Sandra. You need, let's be real. This thing is not easy. It's not necessarily intuitive. Sometimes the vocabulary can be a barrier to entry. So you need sources that can demystify the process. So that's the build skills part. The social capital. I think you need gatherings like this where you get to connect with other founders, you get to connect with investors and hear how they think, and have that social capital that not only gives you the community that Sandra was talking about, so that when you cry, they cry. We can say that you can celebrate a success with someone, but you can learn from somebody. Let's not call them failings, let's call them learnings. But you're learning from what other founders are doing. And then you need the money. You need the capital. And so I think those are the key elements that you need in any ecosystem.
I will say that with knowledge in the capital, how you spend your capital is something that we also need to learn. Because often I find a lot of founders that are self-funding, right? and they run around. We were talking about product management, and they have a great idea, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have a great product. And they spend tons of money, and then they don't understand that what they're doing is they don't know how to spend their money, right?
So I want to, I'm gonna set this up for Ashli as well. So I'm gonna tell you what it doesn't look like, and then I'm gonna say at least one thing that what it does, right? So, and I'm speaking stories. So I see Brian's here. He's spoken stories earlier. I'm speaking stories. One of the things in Atlanta that we got wrong while trying to be right about 8 years ago was creating an environment of professional student entrepreneurs. So back in 2016, we ran the first program for diverse founders. It was a pre-accelerator. So the goal was to get founders to like a Techstars and stuff like that. Sounds good, makes sense. After that, about 4 programs sprung up, kind of doing the same thing, and then after that, 4 more sprung up. So within 2 years, we had about 8 programs for diverse founders in Atlanta. And what we started to see was that founders would hop from program to program. They'd be all on Instagram and LinkedIn, oh, I got in this program and that program, and the vast majority of those programs did not give any funding, right? But if you ask the startup founders where they were from a business standpoint, they were still pre-revenue even 2 years later. So while trying to do good, we created this culture of people staying in school. We like get a job, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like in this case, make some money. Like the point of you being in business is to make money. Well, for the vast majority of people, right? And so, you know, it created a bad culture. So for those with kids or those that have ridden a bike before, it's almost like training someone, you know, to ride a bike in that when we took the training wheels off, they couldn't ride. Like we actually did more harm than good, right? So that's what you shouldn't do when you're creating an ecosystem. Now, part of it is there's a number of things you can do. One thing I think that people don't talk about enough is the leaders in the ecosystem creating a standard of excellence for everybody, right? Whether it be your product, whether it be how you operate the ecosystem, whether it's the values that you have, like do no harm to other people, don't harm other ecosystem builders, and stuff like that. Yeah. Like it's a standard of excellence, and then we got to hold people accountable for doing that. Because if you don't, it just sets everybody back.
Of course. I was gonna quickly add. I think one important thing to your point. I think the idea of being an entrepreneur and founder is like so sexy, right? It sounds good, but there's so much behind it that you don't pay attention the deeper you go. And there's something that I think about as I became an entrepreneur and as I'm working with different organizations is ITTOs, right? And it's ITTOS, and it's called Inputs, Tools, Techniques, and Outcomes. And as you start to build your business and as you start to work with different things, like what are your inputs? Like what are your requirements to get this moving? And then what's your secret sauce, right? What systems, tools, techniques, like how do you create your unique value add that's going to say like, I should come to you over your competitor. And then what are your outcomes, right? Like you're measuring your progress against this KPI to say, hey, maybe I'm moving too fast, or maybe I'm not moving fast enough, or maybe I'm moving fast, but this is really burning a lot of cash or it's burning a lot of resources. So it's things to kind of just think about in moving efficient and effective, right? Those are the two like words I live by. Is it efficient? Is it effective? If it's not hitting those two, then I'm saying, what value add is it? If it can't hit those 3 markers, I'm cutting it. That's just something to add.
I was going to say, the one thing that I still see is missing is talking about entrepreneurship that is not the startups and the founders. So I found with the Festival of the Diaspora, we do a competency building, and we invite anybody that has a business, right? And one of the most touching things that happened to me, it was an older person come to me and say, I have failed all my businesses throughout my life because I didn't have this knowledge. And he's not trying to raise capital. You know, he's retired, and maybe he wants to start a new business, but this is not going to be like, I'm gonna go and pitch competition or all these things. So I think an ecosystem should also include older people that are already gone through businesses and failures and learnings, and help the newer people, because sometimes we think technology and the way we do things now is better or different, but there is a lot of learning that we can get from the people that have done it differently. Like they didn't have check and balances and all of the things that entrepreneurs being asked, right? But they still, some were able to successfully run businesses. And so
I think a real ecosystem needs to have all of that knowledge sharing with those people, and then maybe give them back something, right? So.
Wanted to go back to your point, Joey, about the accelerator programs and folks being involved in those. One Philadelphia has a program called the Early Validation Academy that we ran last year. It's a program that involves individuals with an idea actually validating that idea to see if it can be taken to market. What we found in a lot of those conversations were that people were so married to their concept that when we discussed it with them that, hey, this doesn't meet validation, there was pushback. There will be arguments. Is Sylvester in the room? Oh, he's not in the room. So Sylvester got a couple dirty looks on Zoom cameras because he was very honest and he was very upfront about where they were missing the point. What did you see when you started to deliver that message that, like, hey, it's not about pursuing multiple accelerator programs, you should be moving on? Did you receive pushback from that? How was that received by the community and when the folks that you were talking to?
By people running programs, they got it, right?
Yeah.
People running, my peers, they got it. For founders, they didn't get it. They didn't get it, right? And I think there's several reasons why. Part of it is culture. Part of it is the human experience, right? So what you experience, when I hear you talk about the founder that doesn't like to hear the negative feedback, has anybody ever here been in love before?
Of course.
Do you remember your first time? Well, some of y'all ain't never. That's sad. I thought it was a city of brotherly love. Hold on, I thought everybody here is in love.
We
like,
might need another program for that. So let's just focus on
let's have some deep
entrepreneurship
conversations
right now. Yeah.
Some of y'all are married like I've never been in love. So, okay, maybe you knew somebody that, like maybe one of your good friends, right?
Maybe you saw it in a movie. Yeah, you saw it in a movie.
So if you think back to that first experience, right? And especially if it was one of your friends, and they were so in love with this person, but as your friend, as you were their friend, you realized that person was not good for them. Yeah. If you ever had that experience and you tell them like, yo, this person is not good for you, you know their response. They ain't listening in any way, shape, or form, right? That same emotional feeling is the same thing that founders feel, especially first-time founders, right? It's just literally the same emotion. And so I just stopped kind of telling founders like it's not good, right? It's just not going to land. No matter what I say, it's not going to land, right? So that's why I say it's the responsibility of the leaders in the program, in the ecosystem to create opportunities or not create enough opportunities and make founders ride this bike themselves. Because what I found is that if you make your mistake, like you make your mistake, that's when you're more open to feedback. Yeah. Like you gotta fall off that bike and rough up your knee. Hopefully you don't break an arm, but sometimes it may mean you gotta break an arm, right? And I think the opportunity, I do want to pass it to Ashli because she has a solution for this, which I have a counter to it, but I'm gonna pass it to her.
Great, because that was going to be one of my questions was going to be about Tulsa. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we've had this ongoing conversation about programs and the difference between program hopping, which is lateral moves. Like you're just going from one program to the next and you're not growing. You still can't ride the bike. Or are you program stacking? And I believe in the stacking method. Are you going to one program that you get a series of outcomes, and then that makes you ready for the next program? And that comes with a little more investment on your part and the part of the program. So the way that we do it in Tulsa is like there are steps to this. You know, you go through a startup school, and that's a commitment of every Saturday for a month. And then you enter a pitch competition, and that's a commitment of 20 to 25 hours worth of training, and then you get to pitch live on stage, and you might win some money. We got one in the audience. Yeah, go ahead and wave your hand, Taylor. Thank you. And then you get a little bit of cash. You might get $5,000. You might get $10,000. You might get $20,000 to go put your product and get it validated, get some customers. And then you might go to an accelerator program where you might get an investment of upwards of $70,000. But that's a stacking where your business is progressing every single time. And before you can get into the accelerator, you have to kind of prove that you've gone through these different steps, whether it be in a program or without a program. You have to have proved some sort of product market fit before you get that substantial investment. I think that for ecosystems looking to provide opportunities for founders, you need to be able to provide them like incremental steps that they can achieve so that they're actually accelerating and not just program hopping.
Counter.
So it's a pseudo counter, right? So she's absolutely right? So what she's describing though is a well-functioning, well-intentioned community and ecosystem. Yeah, no, right. Here's the punchline. So and I've seen this too in Atlanta, unfortunately, is that when ego gets in the way, for the people that are running these type of programs, that's when they start to create lateral programs. I guarantee there's somebody in the audience, this is not a knock on people in Philadelphia, anybody here, there's somebody that's attending this conference today that's like, you know what, I can do better than these guys. Like, whether, like, and this is an amazing experience, by the way, I absolutely love this. I want to come back to Philadelphia more, like, but it's somebody in here like, you know what, I can do better. And that type of mentality is what can destroy your ecosystem, because what you should be doing is thinking about how can I create something that stacks. But somebody's like, you know what? I can make money off of this. I can be up on. I want to be the person up here speaking. I want to, I want to be in the technicalities and stuff like that. I want to be in the tech crunches of the world and so on and so forth. And that type of mentality is the thing that destroys ecosystems. So when I talk about the standard and I talk about values, I think component of well-functioning ecosystems is a standard of excellence in the values that can combat that. Yeah.
I wanted to add, so for the Latinas in Tech, when we started our chapter, it was really important that we took collaboration as a real value for us. So we have been collaborating with One Philadelphia. When we talk about creating in Philadelphia a real place for tech to be diverse, we mean it. So we don't just do our event, right? We know that for Cinco de Mayo, all of the Latinos organizations are going to do Cinco de Mayo. Yep. All until we started, we say, well, let's do a Cinco de Mayo with all of the organization. And it is your responsibility as the program lead to start looking and connected in that way, because you can create your own and we can collaborate, right? Like next year, we will do a double the stages, and we're going to have triple the speakers. And then that way people can see themselves succeeding too. And I think when we do it that way, then we all benefit from it.
Yeah. No, I wanted to add to it. So your point is 1,000% true. People are, and it's unfortunate, we live in like such a short attention span society, right? So like all these social medias, it's just like, oh, this looks nice. Oh, I should have this. Oh, I believe I deserve this, right? But there's so many things that go on the other side of that, right? So to your point where you said someone's in the crowd thinking like, oh, I should be up here or I can do this. You don't know how many hours went into actually planning this event, right? I'm sure this wasn't overnight. There were so many ups and downs. There was a lot of heated discussions, back and forth, budget cuts, figuring out, like really, there's a lot that goes behind it. And so I'm the person that when I work with different organizations, I'm peeking behind the curtains, because a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, oh yeah, this is fine. This may cost X amount. This is gonna look nice. It's gonna be great feedback. But like, okay, what is required for this to go there? And who's gonna run this, or who's gonna manage this? Or, what is the impact of this, right? And so we see, especially in the tech space, tech has been booming for like the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. It's been like this really big inflation. And so it's saturated. The market is, in my opinion, there's still a lot of room to grow, but they're saturated with like conferences and organizations and just saying like, hey, let's pop up and let's do a mixer. Let's pop up, let's do a networking event. And it's like, that's fine, but like, what is this leading to? Like, I don't want to just meet people, but are we pretty much directing this conversation and saying like, hey, we're actually connecting, we're actually learning from each other. And so when it comes to like these accelerator programs and going to like multiple and just saying like, hey, I was in this, I was in that, like, what are you actually taking from these programs, right? And so I personally, I went to, I put myself in a program earlier this year from Wharton Business School. They had like an online business program, business development, and I just kind of wanted to measure like my business versus like what the standard is, just to make sure. And there were so many things, like as I was combing, I'm like, oh, I didn't pay attention to this. Like I need to do this, right? I should know the exact cost per customer and what it's returning in revenue or profit, right? I should know that if I'm a business owner. If I want to say like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I should know how much it costs to convert one person to make me be in the green. Right, and these are things that people don't want to say. They're just like, yeah, I'm a business owner. This is what I do. I need funding. But when you're going to pitch that person as a funder, I'm thinking, well, what is this going to do for me? If I'm giving you $20,000, how can I confirm that this is a good investment, right? What does your model actually work? Like, what operating procedures? How do you scale this? These are the things that you have to think about, because as you're trying to persuade someone, you want to make sure that it's a good investment. So you're pretty much penetration testing. Like, how solid is my plan that I could convince someone so that they can give me funding so I can scale this thing?
That's a great point. And to Joey's point, that no one in the crowd can do what One Philadelphia does. I'm not going to say that. That's not. It's not going to be.
I will.
That's not going to be what I say, right? I'll let somebody else maybe say that. But to that point, when we think about the spirit of collaboration, especially with One Philadelphia, the examples of the individuals that are on the stage, we're looking at this from the landscape of overall impact to the city of Philadelphia, not necessarily just for One Philadelphia. Like whenever I go to events or whenever we're supporting other organizations, it's never a competition to One Philadelphia, because we believe everyone in this room, everyone who's attending this summit, everyone has something that they're adding to the overall goal of making Philadelphia the capital of equitable tech and innovation. When I hear about Tulsa, I hear build in Tulsa. I hear that as the tag, build in Tulsa, build in Tulsa. Not saying that I want everyone running around saying One Philadelphia, but it was that, well, she is, right? Well, she calls it One Philly, but we're working on it. We're going to get her to say, add the Delphi on the end of it at one point. But just that concept, just that mindset of like, when we're out and we're talking about the city of Philadelphia, are we all pitching in the same direction? I think that's to your point is, it's not a competition about which organization is the one the name is being screamed out. It's that we're all screaming the same thing when we go out and say it. And that's really, to me, when we talk about building these inclusive innovation hubs, is how do we make sure everyone's in the same direction? How are we all moving forward? Because it moves everyone forward. So if you could talk about that a little, because I did have that question about Tulsa. How has that tag, Build in Tulsa, become the mantra for, and I'm sure there's competing programs, you say that,
Of course.
But how did that become, hey, this is what our rallying cry is going to be?
I mean, we had a moment. We had a historical moment when we were commemorating 100 years since the race massacre. But some of it was, I'm from Tulsa. Tulsa's my hometown. I'm not new to Tulsa, no shade, but I've been there a long time. And so for me, it was really important that we stayed close to that root of what are we doing in Tulsa. I love my new Tulsans. I love my part-time Tulsans. But what are we doing in Tulsa? And one of the previous panel they were talking about, she said the founder said, I love to hear customer feedback. And she said, you have to love your customers. I go a step further. I love my customers, but I also love the problem. How can we solve building generational wealth, generational Black wealth in Tulsa? That's the problem I'm solving. That's the problem I'm obsessed with. So I want to hear from everybody. I want to learn from Goodie Nation. I want to learn from One Philadelphia. I want to learn from Lightship Capital, because I'm obsessed with this particular problem. So when you bring together folks who are obsessed with a problem, they're not obsessed with the solution. They're obsessed with the problem. When you bring those folks together, that's how you get a rallying cry around a community. Because we're all trying to solve this one problem to make a difference in this place. We're not concerned about who's solving it or what the solution is, because the solution is going to change. Hello, AI. The solution is going to change. But if you're in love with that problem, and if you're in love with the customers that you're serving, then you'll get there. And you have to surround yourself with people that have that same mentality and a spirit of excellence.
I wanted to add, I think you can go a little bit further. You should have all of the power of, I'm from here and the problems that are here I want to solve. But what we do with the Festival of the Diaspora is, but people everywhere have this issue, especially Black people. So I was gonna say, when you say, well, the ego gets in it, if you get a founder from the US and you get a founder from El Chocó, Colombia, they will learn so much about how much they do have and how much they can do. Like, if you're an innovator, go to Cuba and learn about the problems that they're solving because they don't have modern technology, right? So I find that the interchange of knowledge with the Black communities around the Americas really can help us grow. Because one, we do have the same problems. Two, we want to get, the innovation, the money, and the growth. But
but some of those communities are solving those problems without the amount of help that we have, and that really helps people grow.
I'm just gonna tell another story. So go
We
ahead.
got 13 or so minutes. You might as well jump on it.
So I want to take you up on that offer. We can talk later. I love the exchange of stories. I think there's a lot of things that people in the U.S. could learn from your community and stuff like that. To illustrate that point around inclusive community building, how we started things in Atlanta roughly 14 years ago was through the power of storytelling. Very specifically, we started doing group therapy sessions for entrepreneurs, right? I won't go into the background and stuff like that. Aside from it's my personal pain that started it, but like people got around the corner, got around the table, at a hotel bar over drinks, and we I'm not gonna curse, but we just really expressed our extreme displeasure at the situation, particularly raising capital, and that created a bunch of bonds between us, and that expanded out to different groups. And then you had people from all over the community, from every single background, describing their frustrations on leading a team, to raising capital, to getting customers, and so on and so forth. And that's how we started to build like this whole cohort of not like programmatic cohort, but like literally like a cohort of people, community that rose together over the years, and we started to kind of put each other in positions of power and stuff like that. And so like with Goodie Nation, I just announced a few hours ago that we're extending our group therapy sessions to community builders. I believe that all community builders need therapy, quite honestly, especially over the past 5 years. And to be clear, we're going to do this session on Thursday, November 7th. That date is intentional. Quite honest. You might need it, right?
You know, just in case. We're hoping not. We're hoping not.
And
just in case. Yeah.
right. Yeah. And for the investors in the room, I know there's at least two. We're gonna do an all investors need therapy session as well, because I know y'all. I was gonna curse. Dang it. I think yeah. I know y'all need it as well, right? And so again, there it is. So again, the power of storytelling around shared experiences can bring everybody from every single situation, every background to the table, and that's how you can build community.
Very good. I'm gonna let Sandra go before we take.
I was just gonna say, we call that ancestral intelligence. That's the other AI.
I'm taking that. I'm taking.
All right.
I'm creative borrowing. I'll get with you later on.
Ancestral intelligence.
Love it. I love it.
Can somebody from One Philadelphia trademark that real quick before I get out there? Competition. So no one used the link to put questions up, so we'll take questions from the room. Well, you just spoke. I'm gonna go to somebody else. Yeah, absolutely. We've heard from you. No, go ahead. Absolutely.
So when you were currently a couple minutes ago, you were speaking about idea validation, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we balance the fear of, and you, Mrs. Ashli, right? You were talking about instead of being lateral, we might just stack, right? Go to the next level. How do we balance between believing in our idea enough to want to go to that next level, but managing the fear of going to that next level and getting smacked down and our idea isn't validated?
Okay. All right. You wanna?
So I was just in Portland at a Black Wealth Summit, and with our friends at BFM Fund, another Black women of color led fund, and I got the opportunity to talk with Beatrice Dixon. Beatrice Dixon is the founder of Honeypot. She did a partial acquisition of her company for $380 million. She said you have to have a religious belief in yourself. And so that's what I'm gonna tell you, young man. You have to have a religious belief in yourself. It will be hard. You are entirely capable of it. Listen to good advice. Build, measure, learn, something I stole from another beautiful woman, Catherine Finney. But you can do this, but you have to have a religious belief in yourself. Listen, become in love with that problem, test your solutions, and then keep learning, and don't give up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good answer.
You are entirely capable. You come from a long line of innovators. If we learned any ancestral intelligence, if we've learned anything, You come from a long line of inventors and innovators and technologists before technology was computer. The one thing people of color do is make something out of nothing. That is your heritage, and that is your legacy. Step into it.
Instagram video right now with a kid staring in the mirror and that being said in the background. Absolutely. Somebody else had a question? Okay, well, yeah. I'll save time for your question for sure.
Hi, my name is Amaya. So how do you guys incentivize people, I guess, staying with their home groups? Because I feel like that's important. So you're from Tulsa. My family's actually from Tulsa too. So, probably not him anyway, but I feel like I have no, let me be real, I feel like I have no incentives of going to Tulsa. But people from there, they are really advocates about it, and then trying to convince people to be a part of a community. So, like, what are your incentives, especially towards millennials, because we're, at least my attention is very short, and so I need to be entertained. So, I guess what are some incentives? Let's go, Ashli. What you got?
Yeah. So best restaurants, clubs, bars to go. Okay. All right, just making sure.
What are incentives to, like, okay, you're a business owner, why should
Yes,
we
great question.
be there in physically in, like, particularly Lear City or whatever each one of you needs to?
Yeah, as like the smallest city up here, and one that, you know, we have this conversation all the time in Tulsa. Actually, I'm going to be real with you. Like, I believe that you should build where you are planted. I really do. I believe that your life has been leading you to a particular moment. I tried to leave Tulsa, okay? I tried so many times. Something was leading me to build where I was planted. And I listened to that, and now I get to do this incredible work. I honestly, young people, like, if what you're interested in is living a life and living a lifestyle, I'm not going to tell you to move to the middle of the country. I'm not going to do it. I would say go visit my friend in Atlanta. Truly, I'm not going to do it. But I think that if you care, particularly if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur and you care about building your business and you care about doing it in a community that cares about you and what you want to build, then you should look at communities like Tulsa. I think that you should also look in your own communities. Look in Philadelphia. There are resources here. There are clearly people that care about the things that you care about. I think you should build where you're planted. And yes, you can, be transplanted other places, but build where you're planted. Find your community, find your people, invest in them, and they will invest in you.
Yeah, and I do want to add, because that's a great point in terms of staying here in Philadelphia, because we love to hear that. But I think that hearing that question, and Tempest, tell me if you agree with this, that should be motivation for those of us that are seeking to build the ecosystem here in Philadelphia, is that we should be the ones that have people saying, no, I want to stay in Philadelphia. I'm not looking for another place to go. And I'm not criticizing what you're saying. I'm just saying we want to make sure Philadelphia is a place where people are not thinking, I have to go somewhere else. And that responsibility isn't just on one Philadelphia, it's on everyone, right? So it's great to hear that, because that's kind of like that, you're not doing enough for me, and we need to hear that so that we'll make sure we're doing the right things to keep people here in Philadelphia. Brian, I'll let you go because we got 5 minutes.
I'll also say that Tulsa creates about 100 funded black startups every single year, more than every other city. The fourth side, I believe, it's large. I have a statement for you guys to reflect on. I want to share your thoughts, not a position. Having traveled around the world, also I've attended your event, it's amazing.
Puerto Rico.
Yes.
We mix the best of diaspora in Puerto
Oh,
Rico.
it's so much bigger now. You gotta go Medellin.
Okay.
There is a Mason-Dixon line draw between southern black cities that say, I could be better than that person, or kind of like crab in the barrel, and that mentality I don't see in Jamaica, in Colombia, in Chicago, in Cincinnati, in Tulsa. Is that true or not? And if it is, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I guess I said it.
Sound like you was taking a shot at Atlanta.
Yeah, I
I'm
feel
just
you. I
saying.
mean, I feel you. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing out, because I haven't been to the Cincinnati's and stuff like that in the world. So, okay, Atlanta is like a House of Cards or a Game of Thrones. Like people call it Black Wakanda, or I mean, it's not Black. Well, Wakanda is black too, but they call it Wakanda and stuff like
Where
that.
is
right?
white Wakanda? Boston?
Yeah, you're right. I apologize. I was gonna say like you're right. Yes. The black capital of the country and stuff like that, right? And with that comes power, right? With that comes power if you are running a certain or if you're in a certain place, right? The Locks told us best, right? Money, power, and respect. And so, through that lens, there are a lot of people vying for the throne. It's human behavior, right? I think, and then perhaps it could be in certain cities where, and again, this is just my off-the-cuff reaction, where black people don't have, in particular black people, don't have the certain level of power as in Atlanta. Maybe that the vying for the throne isn't there, at least in the tech space. I think you'll see it in other parts of the community, politics and stuff like that. But I don't think you may not see it as much in the tech space. And so it's a tough scenario, right? It's a tough scenario. People want influence and power and stuff like that. Like taking out a lens of technology and going to like entertainment. People say like athletes want to be rappers and rappers want to be athletes and stuff like that. And then we'll see in Atlanta. I mean, investors want to be founders. They want to be up on this stage too. Investors throw parties. I'm like, y'all should spend some more time doing some due diligence or something. like real talk. I mean, but that's just the influence and ego and stuff that comes into play. And so, yeah, when you go below the Mason-Dixon line, you see more black people. You see more black people in positions of power, particularly tech. That's where these power dynamics come into play, and people are vying for the throne.
I was going to say, as a black person from another country, I think it's a thing in all black communities. The one thing when I went to Africa, and I was surprised about the tribalism. And I think that's something that when we talk about our ancestors, we have to talk about the things that they did great and some of the things that they didn't do, right? So that we can move forward, because I don't think it's just a matter of slavery or the recent history of blackness. I think we have to look at what happened in Africa, that we were so divided, right? That we let some of the things happen before what happened here. And so that will help us move past this tribalism that and this is just my observation, but we have to think about that and then move past it and do the collaboration, because we are more powerful when we collaborate.
The last statement I'll just add to her point, and I think echoing what everybody said, is so my slogan for my consulting company is driving missions and aligning visions, right? And I work with a number of people who have different missions, but they're targeting that same problem, right? And it's just a different way of doing it. And so I'm an advocate of, building with community partners, right? If we're going to target this mission, let's do it together. And I think that concept of, not having that ego and not being so selfish, and people just fall in love with the money. It's like, if you're obsessing over the problem and you're trying to target resolving this, it doesn't matter if this person gets the credibility. Eventually it'll come back to you. It's like we're eliminating this problem, which should be the greater good, right? That should be your goal. So, the concept of driving missions and aligning visions, they say you travel faster alone, but further together, right? Which is the concept. So just something to think about.
That was a great way to wrap up the panel.
I got
One last one. It said 1 minute left, Alex. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
The attack on DEI is real, right? The climate in the country is changing. How is that impacting? I know everybody can't touch on this. And Joey, you kind of touched on this a little bit with, you never know what's going to happen with this future election. But how is the attack on DEI, equity and inclusion, how is that impacting the building of innovation hubs, right?
That's actually a good question.
Corporate donors, philanthropy, how is this landscape changing? How are you pivoting and dealing with that?
So very funny that I was actually having this conversation for the past few weeks with different orgs. And sponsorship funds and funding do tend to dry up as there's a lot of ambiguity. But this is why it's important to build relationships, right? Because maybe you can't get the funding, but maybe there's another organization that can be a community partner and still have that same vision that you can partner with, and maybe they can get the funding and help you target that, right? And so it's really opening up that network and understanding that funding and sponsorships is not an overnight thing. You're building these long-term relationships. People can kind of see where you're getting at, and then you can collaborate on that initiative to help fund yourself or different initiatives per se. So yeah, building community partners and networking.
Yeah, I would say my estimates are that funding is has gone down and will continue to go down about 80%, right? It's not an official number. That's like, I've been talking to over 100 people the past few months and stuff like that. What that means, a lot of organizations are going to shut down. A lot of organizations have already shut down. Even like literally major organizations like a Women Who Code and stuff like that. It has had and will continue to have a devastating impact in our ecosystem and stuff like that. So there's quite a few things that can be done, and I'll try to be somewhat brief. So very specifically, for the leaders of those organizations, we had to make sure they stay within the tech community. So maybe that means they go and they become like either an advisor or a chief of staff or something like that, like a role to another organization until they find their footing. Two, from a sustainability standpoint for the organizations that are losing funding, even like a Goodie Nation, quite honestly, like you may start to turn to earned income models. Maybe you're doing a little bit of consulting, leveraging the work you've done over the past 5 years in all those insights, very specifically using AI to kind of scale some of those efforts. Not like deep AI, like just to build on top of like a chat GPT and stuff like that. Again, to keep the doors open until the next kind of cycle comes along.
And look internationally, because yes, the U.S. law
Yep.
changes, but there is money everywhere else.
True.